That study that purported to show that diets high in meat, eggs, and dairy could be harmful to health as smoking supposedly suggested that people under 65 who eat lots of meat, eggs, and dairy are 4 times as likely to die from cancer or diabetes. But if you look at the actual study, you'll see that's simply not true. Those eating lots of animal protein didn't have 4 times more risk of dying from diabetes. They had 73 times the risk. What about those that chose moderation, those in the moderate protein group, who got 10 to 19% of calories from protein? They just had about 23 times the risk of death from diabetes, compared to those consuming the recommended amount of protein, which comes out to be about 6 to 10% of calories from protein, around 50 or so grams a day. So the so-called low protein intake is actually the recommended protein intake, associated with a major reduction in cancer and overall mortality in middle age, under age 65. But note it says not in older populations. When it comes to diabetes deaths, lower overall protein intake is associated with a longer life at all ages, but for cancer seems to flip around age 65. These results suggest that low protein intake during middle age, followed by moderate to high protein consumption in old adults, may optimize health span and lifespan. Some have suggested that the daily allowance, standard daily allowance for protein, 0.8 grams of daily protein for every healthy kilogram of body weight, may be fine for most, but maybe older people require more. This is the study upon which the RDA was based, and though there was a suggestion that the elderly may have a somewhat higher requirement, there was just not enough evidence to make different recommendations. The definitive study was published in 2008, and it found no difference in the protein requirements between young and old. The same RDA should be adequate for the elderly. But adequate intake is not necessarily optimal intake. The protein requirement studies don't address the possibility that protein intake well above the RDA could prove beneficial, or so suggests a member of the Whey Protein Panel and a consultant for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. If you follow sedentary individuals over the age 65, they lose about 1% of their muscle mass every year. If you force people to lie in bed all day for days at a time, anyone would lose muscle mass, but older adults may lose muscle mass on bed rest 6 times faster than young people. So it's use it or lose it for everyone, but the elderly appear to lose it faster, so they better use it. The good news is, in contrast to the 12-year U.S. study, a similar study in Japan found that the age-related decreases in muscle mass were trivial. Why the difference? Turns out the participants were informed about the results of their muscle strength, and so often tried to improve it by training before their next exam for the study. Especially the men, who got so competitive, their muscle mass actually went up with age, which shows that the loss of muscle mass with age is not inevitable. You just have to put in some effort. And adding protein does not seem to help. Adding more egg whites to the diet did not influence the muscle responses to resistance training, and that's based on studies funded by the American Egg Board itself. Even the National Dairy Council couldn't spin it. Evidently, strength training induced improvements in body composition, muscle strength, and size, and physical functioning are not enhanced when older people increase their protein intake by either increasing ingestion of higher protein foods or taking protein supplements. Is there anything we can do diet-wise to protect our aging muscles? Vegetables. Consuming recommended levels of vegetables was associated with cutting the odds basically in half of low muscle mass. Why? The alkalizing effects of vegetables may neutralize the mild metabolic acidosis that occurs with age. And it may be that little extra acid in our body that facilitates the breakdown of muscle. I've talked about this before, how muscle wasting appears to be an adaptive response to to acidosis. We appear to get a chronic low-grade acidosis with advancing age because our kidneys start to decline and because we may be eating an acid-promoting diet, which means a diet high in fish, pork, chicken, and cheese, and low in fruits and vegetables. And as you can see, beans and other legumes are the only major source of protein that's alkaline instead of acid-forming. And indeed, a more plant-based diet, a more alkaline diet, was found to be positively associated with muscle mass in women aged 18 through 79 years old. So, if we are going to increase our protein consumption after age 65, it would be preferable to be plant-based proteins to protect us from frailty. No matter how old we are, a diet that emphasizes plant-based nutrition is likely to maximize health benefits in all age groups. As I've explored before, whether you're young or old, male or female, smoker or non, high blood pressure, low blood pressure, high cholesterol or low, having high levels of a toxic compound called TMAO, trimethylamine oxide, in your bloodstream is associated with a significantly higher risk of having a heart attack, stroke, or dying over a 3-year period. Where does TMAO come from? The choline in foods like eggs can be turned by gut bacteria into TMAO, which is then absorbed back into our system, and the more eggs we eat, the higher the levels climb. Given the similarity in structure between carnitine and choline, the same group of Cleveland Clinic researchers wondered if carnitine, found in red meat, energy drinks, and supplements, might also lead to TMAO production, so they put it to the test. If you feed someone a steak, their TMAO levels shoot up. Now, this was someone who regularly ate meat. Those who eat strictly plant-based may start out with almost no TMAO in their system, presumably because they're not eating any meat, eggs, or dairy. But even if the vegan eats a sirloin, almost no TMAO is made. Why? Presumably they don't have steak-eating bacteria in their guts. No TMAO is produced if you don't have TMAO-producing bacteria in your gut. If you don't regularly eat meat, then you're not fostering the growth of the meat-eating microbes that produce TMAO. This suggests that once we develop a plant-based gut ecosystem, our bacteria will not produce TMAO, even if we eat meat every once in a while. However, we still don't know how rapidly gut bacteria shifts after a shift in our diet, but it does not appear to be all or nothing. If you take men eating a standard American diet and have them eat 2 sausage, egg, and cheese biscuits before and after just 5 days of eating lots of high-fat meals like that, you can boost TMAO production even higher. So it's not just do you have the bad bugs or not, you can apparently breed more of them the more you feed them. On the other hand, meat-free diets have been demonstrated to have a profound influence on human metabolism. You can analyze a urine sample and tell what kind of diet people eat based on measurements like how low their TMAO levels are in the urine of those eating egg-free vegetarian diets. You can even take the same people and rotate them through 3 different diets, and you can tell who is who's on a high-meat, low-meat, or no-meat diet, in part based on the different compounds churned out by the different gut flora or different flora activity after just about 2 weeks on the different diets. It's possible that some of the beneficial effects of whole plant foods may be mediated by the effects they have on our gut bacteria. At the same time, the standard American diet may increase the relative abundance of undesirables that produce toxic compounds, including the cardiotoxicant TMAO. Strictly plant-based diets have gained acceptance as a dietary strategy for preventing and managing disease, perhaps in part because of their rather unique gut flora, less of the disease-causing bacteria and more of the protective species. So all along, we thought the reason those eating plant-based had lower heart disease rates was because they were eating less saturated fat and cholesterol, but maybe their lower TMAO levels may also be contributing to their benefits, thanks to their reduction of ingestion of carnitine and choline. I talked about the egg industry response to the choline revelation. How has the carnitine supplement industry reacted? Well, the former VP of Advocare, a multi-level marketing company that sells carnitine supplements like Slam, while getting slammed with lawsuits, finding them, for example, guilty of false, misleading, or deceptive practices, forced to pay over $1 million, in response to the research implicating carnitine and TMAO production, he questioned whether there was a secret vegan conspiracy at the Cleveland Clinic, restricting our intake of meat or carnitine supplements to prevent our gut bacteria from making TMAO, he argues, is like trying to prevent car accidents by restricting the sale of fuel. Okay, but there are benefits to transportation. We're talking about TMAO, which may be fueling our epidemic of heart disease, the #1 killer of men and women in this country. As far as I'm concerned, the more we can cut the fuel for that, the better.